Hi everyone. Sorry, I've been kind of MIA lately. I've been focusing on making my videos for the summit. Okay, in this quick little tutorial, I wanted to quickly go over overpainting. Now, I don't think that I've covered this before, and I thought that it would be really good to just show you what is possible with overpainting. So this image in particular is just straight out of the camera. Shot this with my Sony A9 III, and I think my shutter was like 5500, something like that. And because it was an overcast day, I shone a light behind her onto her hair. So just add a new layer. And this is a new paint set that I'm working on. It has a whole bunch of different things, which is going to be really good, obviously, for anything because it's got no tools attached, but it's also really good for overpainting. So I'm just going to show you a few of these. This one here is a rough texture, which means that it's going to add like a canvas texture. I do want to show you how I would use my knife. Okay, so typically how I use this, and I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller so it's hidden. So typically what I would do is I would have a really low flow because it's pretty strong, but I would just sample the areas that I want to cover up and just go over it like this. Now, because this is like a rim light, which is appearing everywhere, I'm going to leave that very basic rim light there and just cover up this light stand in here. And overpainting is something that I do a lot of, but I haven't really talked about it much here on the platform. So I thought I would quickly show you what it is that you can do with overpainting. Okay, and we're just going to roughly do this. Don't worry about paint strokes, especially like if I was planning on painting this whole image, then this is a no-brainer. But just sample the colors around the areas that you want to paint out and just come in and do this. Okay. So something like this. Add a new layer. Now the next thing that I wanted to show you was a really cool leaf scatter. So actually this one is just a leaf one. The next one is a leaf scatter. But what would you do if you wanted to add more of these guys? Again, my flow's only at 16, and you can add in or embellish your image with a little bit more of this foliage. Now you typically have to put it up relatively high if you want to get really clear leaf textures, right? But because it's a dual color brush, if you sample any of these colors like this, it's going to actually use elements of a couple different colors like this. Okay, so just in case you wanted to maybe bring in a little bit more of this foliage into the image, then you can do that with this. And then the not flower petals, but the leafy scatter, if I chose a lighter color and I came in, this is just going to add those little more sharp kind of detail leaves to this, which I tend to like to do over top of foliage that I add. So something like that. Now this airbrush one here, if I go to white and I come in, it's really nice for glow. So something like this, and then you're just adding that additional glow. And you could even put this like behind here. So if you wanted this to really be glowy, you could just bring it in like this and then have it come in kind of behind here and then maybe over here. All right. So you're essentially just adding a little bit of ambience and atmosphere. And this is just all overpainting. And this is, you can even use this for like photographic images like this one. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything that you're going to paint. And then of course we have our typical chalky brush, which is always handy for coming in and just kind of creating some rough textures This impasti here, I really like this for working on armor and things like that. But you have to make sure that it's pretty low as far as a flow. And then you can just kind of come in and add a little bit of texture to any kind of shiny surface, right? Like armor or any kind of metal, even like swords or things like that. And just sample your colors and work your way down in the color scheme. Because the darker you go, like into the darker areas, then the darker you're going to want that paint color to be. Otherwise, it's going to be way too bright. And you can come back down here and sample and then pull it up in your color picker so that you actually get some of that. So this is really good for adding texture to shiny surfaces. It's really good. All right. So I don't think, especially with painting, that there's very many photographers doing much overpainting. And it does take a little bit of getting used to, but it does really massively affect your image or your paintings. So this is just a rough texture brush, and we're at 5%. I'm going to choose a darker color, and you can consider using this over fabric, which will just kind of give it additional texture. And again, if you're coming in here in the darker areas, you're going to want to use a darker color just to add that texture over top. Okay, so these are great brushes for many different uses. Let's take a look. This is actually a fur brush that I recently played with, and I thought, oh, you know, this is kind of cool. So you could come in, pull that up a bit, and this is a directional brush, so the result should be in whatever direction you're going. I do tend to like to change the rotation of my image just so that I get the proper direction. But yeah, this one is actually really good for pet fur or wildlife. But yeah, you can just come in and kind of add some painting like strokes to the hair. Okay. And I'm unsure of when I'll have this set up for sale, but I just wanted to show you that, you know, if you have managed to save a whole bunch of brushes and you're wondering how you can use them in either a photograph or with painting, there's just so many ways to overpaint, and I would just really encourage you to give it a try. So like these leaf brushes are just amazing for adding in foliage. What else do I have here? Grass. I've got some grass colors in here. Let's just sample this color for ease of use. Make that a little bit more. But yeah, you can just add grass, right? Like if you wanted some more grass, this is going to be a really good one. And again, this is a dual color brush, so you're going to get that realism in with your grass as well. What else do we got? Rock texture. This one's cool. I actually think that this one is going to be good for use with trees. So I'm at 100% right now. It's pretty dark. Let's go a little bit lighter. And then, you know, you can just kind of add a little bit more detail. Maybe you want a little bit of a color on the tree here. like this, and you can see it kind of mimics that same texture that's in the tree. So I really like this one. And you can use this for a multitude of different things, but I think it works really well with like trees. Just drop that down and maybe do a little bit here. Okay. Next one. Let's see. This is pretty. It's a flower petal brush. So what happened if you wanted to add some flowers? Well, just sample different colors so you get a variation in them. You don't want them all to be the same color, right? And over here, maybe you want them a little bit pinker. So this one will be really nice if you've got a nice floral piece and you wanted to maybe add in some petals like so. And what else? Okay, so let's just go ahead and merge all these layers together just for shits and giggles. So when you do that, if you wanted to actually paint these textures after you add them in, let's say it's a very painterly picture, then what you would do, because all of these brushes are being made without tools, that way you can use it as a mixer brush or a pattern stamp tool brush or whatever. Let's, for this one, actually, let's choose our leaf brush for this. But first, let's go to our mixer brush and then choose our leaf brush. And then we're going to go sample all layers. And then because we're still using this brush, we're just going to come in and now we can actually paint these items. Make sure that we're working on a transparent layer and not with a color. And then if you come in here, you can soften them all up. You might want to pull your flow up and your wet a bit. So something like this, and it's going to soften those. And just play with your settings because these are not maintaining any of the tool settings because they have no tools. You do have to adjust to suit whatever you're working on in your image. You just got to make sure sample all layers is turned on if you're working on a transparent layer like I am. Okay. And then if you wanted to use, like, let's say your knife as a mixer brush, just check out your settings. Again, sample all layers, and then you could come in and you could really start affecting the image with a knife like this. Like, what if you wanted this to be more smooth as well as this? I love these knives for a lot of reasons. I just find that they give you those really big, bold painting strokes. Good for hair. And that's the nice thing. You do all your overpainting, especially if you're planning on painting your image, and then you can come back and you can paint using that sample all layers, all of the stuff that you painted on top of your image, and then it all just blends seamlessly. Like so. What else do we have here? Let's try our impaste. So again, this one is going to be more of a blender. Sorry, I keep screwing that up, don't I? So more of a blender brush, but it's still got some heavy texture and impasto type features to it. Just depends on what you want to do. But yeah, if you wanted to come in and just really paint everything back in this, like especially if you did the overpainting with the orange on the tree, it's just going to kind of blend it all in together. I guess I should minimize that so I don't do that anymore. Okay, so that's just a quick overview on overpainting. I wanted to also show you another little technique. Okay, let's say we were working on this image. A couple of things. If you're going to be painting specifically, this is definitely something you want to do. If you want to make the hair long, how do you do that? I just sample the hair like here and make sure you get the ends like that. Command J, and you're going to pull it down, let's say to about here. Command T, and then you can make it a bit bigger. And then you're going to want to stretch it kind of up this way and then down, because that's going to give you the hair like this. Okay? You can pull it down a bit more like this. And, you know, photographically speaking, this would be difficult to really make look super blendy. But if you just go in and you grab just a regular soft brush and you just mask off, let's say, these parts of the image, right? So come in like this and then really reduce your flow and just kind of get rid of these harder edges here. It doesn't have to be perfect because you're just going to paint the hair. Okay, so let's say you did something like this. You might want to soften this edge just so it's not super hard. Okay, let's say you did something like that. But what I highly recommend you do before you do anything else is to go underneath that layer, then between your hair layer and your subject layer. And what you're going to do using that same soft brush is choose one of the darker colors of the shadow that exists already. And you're just going to create a little bit of a shadow underneath that hair, just for believability. Doesn't have to be very strong or extreme, but just a little bit of a shadow, because whenever you add in something, you have to have that shadow. And so now you can merge all of those layers together like this, okay? And then you would do whatever edits you wanted to do, but put a blank layer above it and go to your whatever hairbrush or anything that you're using, which is here, because that's my favorite hairbrush to use. Make sure you have sample all layers. And now when you come in, like even though we can see the fabric in here, it's not going to matter because you can just come in and paint it. And if there's, you know, wonky colors like that in your hair, you can always just use a color blend mode and go over it and fix it. But with this, your edges and everything are going to look so good and so realistic because you're painting. And so don't forget to put all of your embellishments and your overpainting and whatever, maybe hair additions or anything like that, over your image before you begin your painting technique. And then you can just paint it in, and it's not difficult like doing a composite, right? You can just come in and go, oh, okay, I want her hair to be long for this one. Or I want, you know, her hair to be short for this one, or whatever the case may be. Don't forget that you do all your additions before you start painting. And then once you start painting, it just all becomes part of your image. And just follow the direction of the hair. So now you're kind of combining, you know, Photoshop, photography, editing ideas to your painting experience, which I think is not something a lot of people are doing or know how to do, things like that. And don't be afraid to go over top of your subject, like even this. Go into her face. If you want to really affect the background of the hair in here, go over her skin. Don't worry about that. All you're looking for here is believable hair. And especially if you want to extend that hair down, let's say, behind your subject in here, like that. Because then all you're going to do is add a mask. Go to a regular soft brush, and then you're just going to mask all of that off. so that you don't have that overspray onto her or the skin or anything like that. And if you want to keep it here, you can, but you still can just come in and get rid of it all so that it only appears kind of behind her. So that's what I would recommend. And as far as all the little squiggly things, just use a basic soft mixer brush and go in and clean all that up. Okay, so it's the same thing with the wardrobe. You know, let's say, because this is highly textured, right? So what if we grab an impasti and as a regular brush, so we're not going to use it as a mixer brush for this. And let's say that you wanted to just come in and start affecting various portions of the dress. So you could come in and maybe fix that. You could come in and maybe change the shape of this portion like this. You could maybe, add some depth to this wrinkle here. See how it's highly textured? So it's kind of indiscernible what is real and what perhaps isn't entirely real, right? And then if you come in with the lighter ones, you can always add some highlights and what have you. Reduce your flow if you want to use it as more of a highlighter, like this. Okay, and then it's going to be the same type of deal where you're going to probably go into liquify and just change the shape a bit. But like, what about this? So you want to add perhaps more of that green texture to the fabric. Just come in and overpaint it. And then when you paint it, then you've already got the existing colors that you can work with. You could even come in and add a little bit of this green to this dress, like so. And then when you paint it, it's going to look really cool because all of the color harmony is going to be there, right? So we're just adding pieces of that green to the dress. So all of your overpainting prior to doing, and when I say painting, I'm talking more about oil painting as opposed to, pattern stamp tool, although this would definitely work with that as well. But yeah, just sample various colors and come in and add that color to whatever you're trying to do as far as adding overpaint or anything like that. And then when you actually go to paint it, it's going to look so cool. Right? So that's before and after. So anyway, then you do your overpainting and it's going to be absolutely amazing. You can even do this, which I think is super fun. Let's go to our new leaf brush. So if we choose this color here, you just want to go to your secondary color and choose what other color you want to go with it. So then you have like these two. And so when I come in with my leaf brush, let's say I wanted to add those colors, which now match this, right? So you can come in, let's say, even though she's in a studio, just add some leaves or any other type of perhaps florals over top like this. And then when you paint, I'm going to do another layer underneath, but I'm going to make this one really dark. This way. So that the dark is going underneath your lighter leaves and it just gives it that little bit of extra depth, right? So even in here. So then you would go to your top one and probably reduce that one down a bit and then do one over and make this one significantly lighter, just so that you then have some lighter kind of highlighted leaves coming over top, right? So you always have your dark base layer, your mid-tone layer, and then your highlight layer when you're doing any kind of addition to these types of things, just to keep it kind of consistent. So if you do something like that, now you go in and let's say you're going to use let's use our pattern stamp set So now if we go to our flower set down here, right, like this, and go ahead and do a define pattern, and then go to our pattern stamp tool. Now we choose that last pattern that we just created. Now when you come in here like this, you can really paint these in to the entire scene. You can obviously leave them exactly how they are. I still think they're kind of cool, but maybe if you just wanted to come in and soften perhaps just some of them so that the blend is better, you know, choose the ones that are perhaps darker or a little more depth of field to them, just to maintain some of that structure of the lighter ones. It's going to really help make everything look more believable and real. And maybe you want to do a complete oil painting with this, where you're going to just use those brushes to add pops of color so that you can come in and you can really add some big bold strokes and create a painting like that. But there's always something to learn, you guys. Like, no matter what I do or how much I experiment and play around, I'm quickly figuring out that regardless of how much you think you know, there's always more to learn, right? So if you use that one, you could even make your brush really small and then go around the hair just to soften those edges and kind of blend everything in a bit more, which is just going to help lend itself to this more painting-like look. Okay, so don't be afraid to use the pattern stamp tool on your edges, because it really will soften and make everything look pretty. Okay, that's all for today. I just wanted to share that with you because I wasn't sure if you guys were aware of how fun it is to overpaint. Additionally, you know, as far as brushes are concerned, I still encourage you to go to Photoshop, Creative Cloud, and download as many as you can, because you're going to find so many free brushes that you can then convert to no tool brushes and make them your own. Have a great day.